Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you, our Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. Savior lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy He brings. But greater still, the calm assurance this child can face uncertain days because He lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. And then one day I'll cross the river, I'll find life's final war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know He lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. And life is worth the living just because He lives.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. And again, this is a Protestant chapel service, and so I invite you to get a copy of your Protestant Bible and turn to the New Testament. And we're going to be looking at Hebrews, just 3 verses this morning. I hope they provide encouragement as I will be speaking about trusting in God's throne. Trusting in God's throne. All right, so Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy set before Him, endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider Him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." I want to read a story to you. You might be familiar, or you've heard of the name Shaquille. Shaquille is his brother. Shaquille Griffin put up some impressive numbers at the 2018 NFL Combine. And during his senior year, he was an instrumental part of an undefeated season at the University of Central Florida. He is a 2-time All-ACC selection. Shaquille was a 2017 second-team All-American. At the Combine, he bench pressed 225 pounds 20 times. before running the 40-yard dash in 4.38 seconds. This was the fastest time by a linebacker since 2003. Despite his impressive resume during the draft, Griffin was watched as 13 linebackers were taken, and when the fourth round closed, his name had yet not been called. And he knew why. Griffin was born with amniotic band syndrome. The result was an undeveloped left hand and painful nerve complications. He had to work harder than his peers to prove himself, and he always had to have a plan for succeeding with a missing limb. In the days leading up to the draft, Griffin's story was covered by several news outlets, including Sports Illustrated. The NFL had never drafted an amputee, but Griffin was too good to overlook. Albert Breer, columnist with SI, described Griffin's heart this way: fighting through a shortcoming is one thing. Having a plan for coming out on the other side of the story is just as important. Clearly, Griffin's always had a plan. These things aren't just a result of desire. There is design to it. And that design paid off with the fourth pick in the fifth round. The Seattle Seahawks, the team which the year before drafted his brother Shaquille, took Shaquem. Griffin was interviewed by ESPN shortly after receiving that phone call from Coach Pete Carroll. In that interview, Griffin explained what it was like to watch and wait for his big moment. He said this: "It was tough. I'm not going to lie to you. Watching all those guys picked in front of me, just falling back and knowing that I did everything I was supposed to." But get this, he says, now it's in God's hands. It's in God's hands. There it is. Did you see that? He basically is saying, do your best work, then allow God to do his. You cannot control circumstances, but you can control how you respond to them. Sometimes we are tempted to give up and surrender to a lesser path because of misfortune. Other times we take on the pressure of proving ourselves to a world that has written us off. Both approaches inevitably lead to an endless frustration. At least for this moment in his career, Griffin nailed the solution to both temptations. And don't ever forget this: do your best work, then allow God to do his. Or said another way, which I like it like this: remember this, work faithfully, then have faith in God's work. Work faithfully, then have faith in God's work. Try, and then trust. You see, that's the theme I want to focus on this morning of trust, is to work faithfully and trust in God by faith to work out the things in your life. We've got to continue to work as hard as we can, doing our very best. And God will see to it. He will do his. And he will give and have this finished product, you, on display. I really struggle, I think, if that was me and I was Shaquem during the second, third, or fourth round, wondering why I wasn't picked as good as I had shown them to be by being the fastest linebacker in many, many years, but having a missing limb because of that unfortunate birth defect in a situation. The amniotic syndrome, a lot of pain and nerve damage in his hand. He actually had it amputated, and so we have a guy that really is having to work harder than the man next to him. He's at the pinnacle of football. He's at the top of his game, all the discipline, all the hard work. And yet you're seeing that slowly fade away as you're Shaquem and you're sitting there and all the other players are getting picked before you. I would have been on the phone with NFL and say, hey guys, what's going on? Why aren't you picking me? I'm one of the best, and trying to reach out or talk to your connections. And just imagine him sitting back in complete peace, saying it's in God's hands now. Have you ever found yourself that way? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you must trust in the one who created you, the outcome, the circumstances that you find yourself in, maybe even right now during this pandemic, that you find yourself in these difficult circumstances and you're having to put your trust in God. And maybe you don't have that peace that Shaquem had during that NFL draft to say, it's in God's hands. Because I really believe that as believers during this time in 2020, I really feel like there is this throne issue taking place among believers, among followers of Jesus, is that we are putting our trust in other kind of thrones this year. We're being forced to put our trust in other thrones. That could be the throne of health, the throne of wealth, the throne of prescription drugs. That could be the throne of the army, your security, your place that you put your trust in, day out. Maybe it's not the army, maybe it's your family, maybe it could be a number of things, but I really believe that this year is proving to be a throne issue for many followers. And so I ask you this morning, soldiers of the 306, is where are you placing your trust today during this pandemic? Where are you placing your security in? What throne are you worshiping this morning? Because I want to say that there's one throne that we can trust, and I have full confidence that we can trust in that throne, and that's God's throne, which has led me to this text, Hebrews 12, to trust his throne. That's the title of the message today, is to trust his throne. You see, we can trust his throne because it provides sanctification. It provides sanctification. Just look at what this first verse says. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us. You see, this word sanctification gets thrown around a lot of times, where you might hear another soldier or somebody else say, I'm not perfect. God's still working on me, or I'm a complete mess, but I'm a work in progress. And though that's true, soldiers, that's so true. We are a work in progress. But a lot of times when we throw around this word sanctification, it really is a solo type mentality. It's a solo game that we play, and it's not a team effort. And I want to share with you, sorry, my computer went on sleep mode, but it's this idea of sanctification. It is a personal responsibility, but it's also a team effort. Because look at what he says right here, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. And look at this next two words, let us. You see, don't ever think that you can get through this Christian life by yourself, that sanctification just takes place by yourself. You see, the writer of Hebrews is saying, because we have these great cloud of witnesses, let us, those that you look to your left and to your right, why don't you find them and help you? Let us do this together. That's what the army is. It's a team effort. It's one team fighting together for one goal. And so this is our goal, is to this idea of sanctification. That there's this goal of sanctification because it removes the sin in our lives. You notice that there's a few things that hinders. I want you to think of athletes when it comes to weights. I don't know if you've ever seen maybe some athletes with weight vests or different things. They purposely wear these things to give them better endurance, so when the actual race takes place, they can run with better endurance. This is what he's talking about, is that we strip off these weights when we prepare ourselves for this race that God has set before us. We strip these things off, and those weights could be love of country, it could be love of family, it could be our the way we feel at home by being comfortable, or things in our lives that we sort of take for granted. It's these things that we call weights that could slow us down. And can I tell you that we must strip these things off? But he's saying there's one thing that so easily trips us off that we must strip off, and that's this sin, which is why we must be in this idea of sanctification. So soldiers, we can trust his throne because it provides sanctification. And that sanctification involves a team sport by you and I removing that sin that trips us up. What is that sin today that trips you up? There's a sin that trips all of us up. It's that sin that we feel is no big deal, that nobody really knows about. And the reason why we get tripped up is because we try to hide it, because it's something simple that we keep messing up and keep going back to over and over again. So I pray this morning that you would confess that sin and ask God to forgive you. But not only do we remove sin, the sanctification by removing sin, but the sanctification by running his race. The NIV, which is what I just read, doesn't render it another way that a translation does. A New Living Translation would render this the race that God has set before us. It says there in the last part of verse 1, you see the race that you and I are running in this life, this Christian race, it's a marathon. But I don't know if you've ever ran a race, but you see, this race is God's race that he set before us. You are running God's race. He is not surprised by the obstacles that you face or the things that trip you up. And so remember, soldiers, that this race that you're running, I hope that you're running it at a marathon type speed, is that you're running his race. He's the author. He's the perfecter of your faith. He knows what's going on in your life. He knows this pandemic is taking place. And so we must trust in his plan to run his race. And so his throne, we can trust his throne because it provides sanctification. But second, we can trust his throne because it provides satisfaction. You see, it provides satisfaction. There's a lot of things that are begging for our satisfaction in our world today. I don't have to list those things, but can I tell you those things that claim to satisfy us never fully satisfy us? We always go back to, you might say, well, I have a nice house, and so that satisfies me. But can I say that house could be taken away from you at any moment? Or what are some things that you have put your hope in, or that you've been satisfied by, only that in the long term or short term they have let you down? We've been satisfied with maybe our money.